Imagine hearing something that could completely change the way you understand life, death, and whatever lies in the space between them. Because unlike what many people believe, some of the most astonishing stories about reincarnation didn't come from monks, mystics, or ancient legends. They came from science, or at least from the corner of science brave enough to look at the unexplained with seriousness. What if I told you that in different parts of the world, children who couldn't even say their own names yet were already describing with shocking accuracy how they died in a previous life? And what if I told you that when investigators checked these claims detail by detail, almost everything matched real historical records? This is the story of Ian Stevenson, a researcher from the University of Virginia who dedicated decades of his life to studying spontaneous memories of children who claimed to remember past lives. No hypnosis, no guided regressions, no spiritual rituals, just natural memories that appeared on their own, memories that could be verified. Stevenson investigated more than 3,000 cases worldwide, and among them, a few were so rich, so specific and improbable that they became milestones in the field. Today, you will hear 3 of those cases, 3 stories that leave even the most skeptical minds unsettled. 3 stories that may reveal that our existence is only one chapter of something much larger. The first case takes us to Sri Lanka in 1971. A little boy named Sujith, barely 2 years old, began saying things that no one in his family could understand. He insisted that his real name was Sammy. He said he had been a railway worker. He said he sold alcohol, and he claimed he had lived in a town called Gorakana about 10 kilometers away. Sujith's family had absolutely no connection to that place. They had never visited Gorakana, never heard stories from there, never met anyone from the area. And yet this small child spoke of the place with the familiarity of someone who had walked its streets for years. But what came next was even more disturbing. Sujith described exactly how Sammy died. He said that after a heavy drinking episode and a fight with his wife, Sammy stumbled out of the house and was hit by a truck on the road. A precise description from a tiny child who could barely form complete sentences. At first, Sujith's mother ignored the statements, assuming they were just remnants of a child's imagination, but he kept repeating the same story. Word spread through the community until it reached a Buddhist monk who decided to investigate further. He interviewed Sujith and extracted 16 specific details that could be checked in the real world: names, locations, professions, relationships, and events. What he discovered shocked everyone. A man named Sammy Fernando had indeed lived in Gorakana. He had been a railway worker. He had sold alcohol. He was married to a woman named Maggie, and he had died after being struck by a truck. Even more striking, he had died only 6 months before Sujith was born. All of this was verified before Ian Stevenson became involved. When Stevenson traveled to Sri Lanka to investigate in person, he confirmed 59 separate statements made by Sujith. 59. These were not vague impressions or broad coincidences. They were precise, concrete details reconstructed by a child who should not have known any of them. And there was something else: psychological traits. Sujith displayed characteristics strongly associated with Sammy: an intense love for singing, sudden bursts of aggression, unusual generosity, and even an early attraction to cigarettes and alcohol. It was as if fragments of Sammy's personality had crossed the boundary between 2 lives and resurfaced in this young boy. For many, this case alone would be impossible to dismiss. But the second case pushes the mystery even further because it involves something even darker and more unsettling: the detailed recollection of a murder. The second case took place in India in 1953 and centered on a boy named Ravi Shankar, not related to the musician of the same name. Like Sujith, Ravi began speaking about a previous life around the age of 2. He said he used to live in a neighboring district and described his former house, his neighborhood, and the objects he once owned: a wooden elephant, a toy gun, a ball, and a ring kept in a drawer. His parents were puzzled, unsure what to make of it. But everything changed when Ravi began describing his former father, a barber whose name he provided clearly. That alone was curious but not alarming. Then, Ravi said he had been murdered. He described the killers. He gave their names and professions. He said he was eating guavas when they attacked him, and he explained that they slit his throat with a knife. What child invents something like this? The answer arrived when a man visited the family after hearing rumors about the boy. He said his own 6-year-old son had been murdered 6 months before Ravi was born, under the exact same circumstances Ravi was describing. The guavas, the toys, the father's occupation, the knife wound, everything aligned perfectly. Years later, in 1964, Stevenson traveled to India to investigate in person. Ravi was 13 by then, and the memories had faded, as they often do as children grow older. But a school teacher had recorded Ravi's early statements in detail. Using those notes, Stevenson verified 59 separate statements made by the boy, and then he noticed something chilling. Ravi had a narrow birthmark on his neck, long and thin, just like a healed knife wound. It matched the fatal injury from the boy who died. Ravi also suffered from an irrational fear of knives and avoided the region where the murder was taking place, even though he had no logical reason to feel threatened by it. How do we explain a scar that resembles a wound from an event the child never lived? How do we explain fear rooted in memories that shouldn't exist at all? Stevenson did not claim certainty, but he documented what he saw. And if these first 2 cases stretch the limits of coincidence, the third tears through them completely. This is the story of Jimmy Svensson, a boy in Alaska who began telling his mother something no parent is prepared to hear, that he was her dead brother. Jimmy described a house located 160 kilometers away, a house he had never been to, yet he remembered vividly. He described its interior, its yard, the landscape surrounding it. His mother was stunned. There was no way he could have known any of it. And then, Jimmy said how he died. He said that he was shot in the stomach. When Stevenson examined the case, he found that Jimmy had a circular birthmark in exactly the position where the bullet had entered the body of the uncle who had been murdered years earlier. The shape, the size, the placement, everything matched the autopsy report. And beyond the physical mark, Jimmy behaved like his uncle. He had the same habits, the same reactions, the same mannerisms the family remembered. Stevenson classified the case as one of the strongest examples of reincarnation occurring within the same family line. After hearing all this, one question becomes impossible to avoid. What exactly are we witnessing? Are these just extraordinary coincidences? Are they fragments of stories absorbed through unknown channels? Are they manifestations of the human mind in ways we still don't understand? Or are they glimpses of something far more profound, something that suggests consciousness, memory, and identity are not limited to a single lifetime? Stevenson's cases do not prove reincarnation in an absolute scientific sense, but they reveal patterns, anomalies, and consistencies that challenge the traditional view of human existence. They force us to ask whether this life is truly our first or just our latest. If consciousness continues after death, then what does that say about who we are, and what purpose might we be fulfilling, knowingly or unknowingly, across lifetimes? If you stayed with this story until now, thank you. Few people have the courage to confront mysteries that challenge everything they believe about life and death. And now, I ask you, which of these 3 cases affected you the most? Which one made you rethink what it means to exist? If this narrative made you reflect, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing this video with someone who needs to hear these stories. And join me again in the next episode, where we will explore another phenomenon that science tries to explain and still cannot. Until then, take care of your journey, whether it is your first or simply another chapter in a much longer story.